it is not looking good for Donald Trump right now. His cognitive and physical health are rapidly deteriorating before our very eyes. In the past month and a half, Donald Trump's health has taken a turn for the worst based on everything we've been able to observe. Even Donald Trump's former press secretary is saying that even by Donald Trump standards, this is bizarre and something is deeply, deeply unwell with him. You think Stephanie Grisham, who used to be Donald Trump's press secretary, wrote in a social media post, this presser, referring to the presser earlier in the week, is bizarre even for him. It's all the usual rambling off-topic tales, half-truths, lies. I fixed everything. No one has ever seen anything like this stuff, but it's low energy and it feels like he's mentally slipping. Congress, please wake up, please. Please, Congress. So you have Donald Trump's former press secretary saying, Congress, please wake up. Invoke the 25th Amendment. And on Capitol Hill, the 25th Amendment has become a major topic. Now, Donald Trump's sycophants on his cabinet and in the House of Representatives in the Senate are too cowardly to bring this up. But this is the main conversation right now, that Donald Trump is not exhibiting proper adult behavior. That's where we are, that he's not exhibiting proper adult behavior. I mean, you saw him in Davos, Switzerland, ranting and raving like a lunatic. He was confusing Greenland with Iceland over and over again. This was when earlier in the day yesterday, he was still all about invading it. But he said, we're going to take over Iceland. It should be ours. Iceland is going to be ours. Then later in the day, he said, I made a deal for infinite amounts of time with NATO that we are going to do something relating to Greenland, and I'm not going to invade it anymore, but I'm not telling you what is going on here. And just remember, earlier in the week, remember how the week started with the letter from Donald Trump to the Prime Minister of Norway, where everybody was like, did he really send this? Even by Donald Trump standards, this is beyond Trump standard, lunatic. Remember the letter Trump sent? Dear Jonas, the Prime Minister of Norway, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Prize for having stopped 8 wars, plus I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China, and why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, DJT. And as Congresswoman Ansari writes, the President of the United States is extremely mentally ill, and it's putting all of our lives at risk. The 25th Amendment exists for a reason. We need to invoke it immediately. Senator Ed Markey writes, invoke the 25th Amendment now. Just take a look at what Caroline Leavitt looked like during Donald Trump's press conference earlier in the week. Look at her eyes. Look at her face. Even she was horrified, and she knows something is deeply wrong and unwell with Donald Trump as his cognitive and physical health rapidly deteriorates. That brings us to Davos, Switzerland. Donald Trump could not walk straight. Remember, as we previously reported, back when Donald Trump met with Vladimir Putin in Alaska, I guess before he now invited Putin and Putin accepted to join Donald Trump's peace board, which includes Putin, Lukashenko, Benjamin Netanyahu, and like nobody else. Remember back at that Alaska summit? Remember that Donald Trump was zigzagging and he couldn't walk straight. Then remember Donald Trump took a trip to Asia, met with the Prime Minister of Japan, and she had to help him walk. You remember those data points right there? Well, Donald Trump cannot walk in a straight line in Davos, Switzerland. We caught that on camera. And then he just sounded so terrible during the speech. He couldn't complete any coherent thoughts. It was word salad. It was, confusing countries that he wants to invade. It was deeply, deeply unwell stuff. Take a listen as he just sounds utterly terrible. Here, play this clip right here.
All caused by this horrible president, just horrible president. I'm asking Congress to cap credit card interest rates at 10% for 1 year.
And then when Donald Trump was asked by Kernan from CNBC about NATO and Greenland, and so you did a deal, Donald? Donald Trump's like, well, we did a concept of a deal.
Can you go into what you just talked about with the NATO meeting?
Well, we have a concept of a deal. I think it's going to be a very good deal for the United States, also for them. And we're going to work together on something having to do with the Arctic as a whole, but also Greenland. And it has to do with the security, great security, strong security, and other things.
And then remember, Donald Trump confused Greenland with Iceland multiple times. Here, play this clip.
But the problem with NATO is that we'll be there for them 100%. But I'm not sure that they'd be there for us. If we gave them the call, gentlemen, we are being attacked. We're under attack by such and such a nation. I know them all very well. I'm not sure that they'd be there. I know we'd be there for them. I don't know that they'd be there for us. So with all of the money we expend, with all of the blood, sweat, and tears, I don't know that they'd be there for us. They're not there for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. I mean, our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland. So Iceland's already cost us a lot of money. But that dip is peanuts compared to what it's gone up. And we have an unbelievable future.
You heard him right there, right? Confuse Greenland and Iceland over and over again. And so he's talking about invading Iceland when he means Greenland. Why are you talking about invading Greenland anyway? And then later in the day, he says he has concepts of a deal after doing what you just saw. So then Donald Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, responds to somebody named Libby Dean. And Libby Dean said, during Donald Trump's remarks, Trump appeared to confuse Iceland and Greenland. To which Caroline Leavitt said, no, he didn't, Libby. His written remarks refer to Greenland as a piece of ice, because that's what it is. You're the only one mixing up anything here. We heard it, Caroline. We heard it. And you know who else is hearing it? Our lawmakers. Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett spoke to Pablo Manriquez, who's with the MeidasTouch network. Here's what she told us. Play this clip.
Given what we've seen at Davos and throughout his presidency, what do you make of Donald Trump's cognitive decline? People are saying it's only going to get worse. Like, what does Congress need to do about that?
Yeah, I honestly don't think that he was equipped to actually swear into office in the first place. But I did have serious concerns, and this is not about partisanship. This is not about how he and I spar. This is literally based upon what some actual doctors were telling me were signs. And so we have tried to investigate this as a member of the Oversight Committee. I launched an investigation requiring and asking that we get answers about not only his mental fitness, but also his physical fitness, and they've yet to respond.
Congresswoman AOC spoke with Pablo Manriquez, who's with the MeidasTouch network. Here's what she said. Here, play this clip.
How big of a factor is Donald Trump's cognitive decline, given what we're seeing at Davos?
I think that the president has been acting in increasingly erratic ways. I think it is really damning when we think about the degree to which mass media outlets reported on Joe Biden, and you know, that resulted in the Democratic Party changing its nominee, etc. Yet we are seeing behavior from Donald Trump that is increasingly erratic and alarming, and everyone's pretending that this is normal. I don't really understand why that is. It is very bizarre. But then, importantly, I think that for our European partners and for our global partners, I think what they also see is the result of not just one man, right? But also the entire government apparatus and a party that is willing to watch someone decompensate in front of the world and do nothing about it. I don't know what's going on, but I find that the standard it would be helpful if we could apply an even standard here and far more, a fraction of the reporting that was dedicated, a year or two ago to see that applied right now.
Democratic Congress member Jim McGovern spoke with Manriquez. Here's what he said. Play this clip.
Is Donald Trump's mental health a concern for you after some of the things that he's been saying in Europe?
Well, he said a lot of crazy shit today at Davos. I think it's time to take the keys away from Grandpa. I mean, he doesn't seem like he's all there. I guess some of my Republican friends are saying we should be comforted that he said he's probably not going to use force in Greenland. I don't trust the word he says. I wouldn't trust him to tell me the correct time. Don't forget, before the Christmas break, they said they weren't going to do anything in Venezuela. Susie Wiles in an interview said they'd come to Congress first. And when we're on break, what do? They go into Venezuela. So, this is this president who writes, letters complaining that he's not going to be peaceful anymore because he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize. This is unhinged, and this is just nuts.
What, I guess, for the rest of the term, what's your message to your Republican colleagues about his cognitive decline?
Yeah, like I said, it's time to take the car keys away from Grandpa. They need to wake up. They need to. This can't be normal. I know. And I'm so sick and tired of Republicans coming up to me privately and saying, "Oh yeah, this is unhinged. This is crazy. Oh, he's off his rocker." And then publicly, when you ask a question like, "What do you think of him?" "Oh, he's the greatest president in the world." This is our country, for God's sake. And he's threatening our NATO alliance. And the whole world is like, "What the hell is going on here?" So this is a moment for Republicans to, grow a spine and actually put their country ahead of their own, re-election.
Democratic Congress member Ryan from New York spoke with Pablo Manriquez from the MeidasTouch Network. Here's what he said.
Donald Trump's cognitive decline. We saw him say some really crazy things at Davos. What does that mean for the future, for the rest of this term?
Well, we've been seeing this, and the fact that he couldn't even get the country right that he is saying he wants to invade, it's incredibly dangerous. I think what's important for people to know, I served 27 months in combat. When you're out there making threats of our allies, the American people are now less safe. And that's, at the end of the day, that's our job. His cognitive decline is well documented, but that can't be at the expense of my constituents and especially the people in uniform. This makes them less safe.
Now I want to bring in Dr. Vin Gupta, the leader of Meidas Health. Dr. Gupta, great to see you. You and I have been covering the at least appearance of Donald Trump's deteriorating and declining health. You and I have been very careful in the way we've covered it, describing what's physically observable, contrasting his words to the actual medical data and procedures out there when it comes to advanced imaging, when it comes to the claims he makes about the bruising on his hand, the slurred speech. But it seems that really, since you and I have been doing a lot of these videos, things have gotten much worse. The clips that I've shared at the beginning of this video of Trump in Davos, confusing Iceland and Greenland, again, the slurring of the words, again, not being able to walk straight on the red carpet. Lots of people are talking about this now because it is very observable and very problematic. What are you observing, Doc?
Yeah, Ben, from the very start, I think, number one, he's the president of the United States. So let's hope he's getting beyond the headlines, the care that he needs. He does have a family history, importantly, of age-related dementia. His father, famously, this has been well documented, Fred Trump, had age-related cognitive decline, and it manifested, frankly, and a lot of his family members have actually spoken out about this. There's a lot of similarities between what we're seeing more and more frequently. We're observing a lot of the trends that we first noticed a few months ago, where there's a symmetry between some of these earlier signs, in his case, and what his father went through. Mary Trump, others of his extended family have spoken out about this symmetry. But what are we seeing? We're seeing, again, we're just observing the facts here. Just to say we don't have his medical data, I don't have access to his medical chart, but this is what everybody's observing, and he's the president, so I think the scrutiny is fair. Word-finding difficulties. The fact that he has inattention, he loses his train of thought. Everybody is describing these speeches as meandering, covering 30 different topics in the course of, say, 2 minutes. He's meandering. So that's inattention, clear inability to express his own thoughts, difficulty completing a sentence, tangential speech, of course, memory issues. He doesn't know that he's talking about Greenland for even the course of a sentence, and he confuses it with Iceland. There's significant concern. And, that's just on the nature and content of a speech. When we think about his behavior, he's always been off the cuff, and that's his style. And people can say, well, that's his style. But, very serious people, and I, from what I've seen on both sides of the political aisle, have called out the letter that he sent the Norwegian Prime Minister, Ben, which also fits in with these broader trends that we're seeing that are concerning, that I think are cascading. The fact that he would even put a letter out there in the public domain has caused a lot of alarm. Who does that? That is not even behavior for him that we think would meet a standard of decorum or just proper behavior. And again, I know he's redefined the rules here, but he's lashing out. He doesn't have, he's having elements, I would say, some people say, well, is he showing signs of early Alzheimer's or early just age-related cognitive decline? Perhaps. A lot of the symptoms that we just talked about are consistent with those diagnoses. Again, we're just observing what we're seeing. But frontotemporal dementia, the acting out, behavior changes, lashing out, acting unreasonable. One could say this is his core fundamental personality based on what we've seen over frankly, his entire adult life. But it's getting worse. And I think a lot of folks have pointed to that letter that he sent the Norwegian Prime Minister as deserving a more thorough, transparent public assessment of his neurologic fitness, because that felt like that crossed the line of just, proper adult behavior. And so I do agree there's been a trend line here, Ben. It seems like it's getting worse across the dimensions we just talked about. And it's nothing, and we have said nothing when it comes to just his gait and, what seems like his psychomotor performance, his ability to walk down the steps of Air Force One or down, across a red carpet. He does seem like he's walking gingerly. Hard to know what to make of that. But when you couple that with all these other signs of his cognitive performance, it makes one wonder what's actually happening behind the scenes.
Right. The words that I extracted also from what you said, proper adult behavior. And I also think about what California Governor Gavin Newsom said earlier in the day yesterday when he says, why are we grading this guy on a curve? If anybody behaved this way, we would be calling it out. But why are we pretending that this is normal? And when you use those words, proper adult behavior, frankly, I think about Fred Trump's spiral into frontotemporal dementia, Alzheimer's, and then leading to his death. Because one of the things that were notable was that Fred Trump would show up and the family around him. We got these medical records in connection with some of the lawsuits surrounding his estate. And he would show up and he would take all these cognitive exams also, the same type of Montreal style cognitive exams. And, instead of the different animals, part of the test that he would take is drawing the clock and which time it is. And he would fail it miserably, but he would show up. He would say he's great. The family would say he's great, but the doctor would observe, no, there's something really going on here. He doesn't have proper adult behavior when he presents. And so one of the things that you do as a doctor when patients show up, and you're a practicing physician. I mean, this isn't a background or set. You're a practicing physician. One of the things you're tasked with, right, is that the patients show up. They'll say things to you, and often patients and even sometimes their family are in denial, and they'll say, I'm great, I'm doing fine, things are amazing. But you exercising the Hippocratic Oath, and what you have to look at it and assess it and say how the patient presents when they show up. And granted, you don't have Trump's chart. You do have observations, and more so than ever right now, I do think that there is this there's this growing sense of this individual does not have proper adult behavior. And that's where we're at.
Absolutely. You know, having seen the last 3 years here, Ben, where presidential health has rightfully come under scrutiny. I think there was rightful scrutiny after President Biden's debate performance on what's happening and is everything okay? And people are asking questions. I think there was, if you ask me, there was a greater chorus of questions on his health when he was the incumbent president than we're seeing for the current president. Not the same level of broad scrutiny. But yes, exactly. I think patients, their family members will, of course, have their own narrative. And you understand that. There's, especially from a patient perspective, it's their own lived experience. And sometimes they may not capture what's actually happening. But we're seeing it. And we're seeing, from what you and I have talked about just over the course of the last, say, 4 months, it seems like there's been a pretty precipitous decline. This is not selection bias. So take a clip here, take a performance here. There's a part of the speech here. No, this is the entire 60-minute speech. That's meandering. That's nonsensical, where we can barely understand one cogent thought from his entire speech. And he's giving it to a group of heads of state in Davos right now. Nobody can really understand his train of thought. I mean, that's just an observational fact here. Everybody is saying it, meandering. A lot of people feel embarrassed by it. Take the emotion out of it. What's actually happening? And I go back to some of the data points that we were given by his personal physician. Again, they didn't know that he got a CT scan now is the story, not an MRI. And for whatever reason, he just got a CT of his heart, which is fine. That's actually a reasonable thing to do as we get older, look for calcium deposits in our coronary arteries. But that's not the story they initially told us. So there isn't medical transparency here when it comes to his records. The story constantly morphs and changes. First, we're debating the MRI. Now it's the CAT scan. Okay, that seems weird that we wouldn't have transparency just on a fundamental diagnostic. But then two, one wonders, maybe he does need a formal neurologic assessment that's made entirely public. I mean, he has demonstrated enough weaknesses in his, just in his executive functioning. His executive functioning, I think ultimately, Ben, it comes down to his executive functioning. Can he function as we kept using the phrase, a proper adult at 79 years of age? Does he have proper executive functioning to serve as the president of the United States of America at 79, given what we know about his family history? It seems like he's had a steep decline in terms of his cognitive performance, cognitive abilities just in the last 4 months. And again, I don't think that's selection bias. These are full speeches. These are full news conferences, full press briefings when he has other people in the Oval Office. This is not just one clip here or there.
And then finally, before we go, you reference it there, we could resolve these issues if the proper reporting and documentation is released and we get accurate testing and transparency over what really took place. If you say there's a CT scan, you can show the CT scan results. And you as a physician, you as a doctor, you can look at it and go, okay, this looks like what a CT scan looks like. Or if it was an MRI, you've seen MRIs before. You know what an MRI looks like. And it's not any of these reports that say, and these are the types of reports that Donald Trump is putting out now, Donald Trump's health is evidenced by winning golf tournaments, or that he's 6'3", 205 pounds, or whatever it is. And it's just like, okay, enough. That's nonsense. Just release the actual stuff. And then we can just resolve the issue, once and for all. We know what we observe. You pair that, though, with then the hiding of things, and it's like, got it. There must be something really, really bad if you're going down this route. I'll give you the final one.
Yeah, why? You can put to rest the makeup on the back of his hands. You can put to rest all this hemming and hawing on his diagnostics by just having an independent set of experts, under HIPAA, take a look. Get the nation's best neurologists and dementia experts. I mean, it's not that hard. Have them take a look at all the tests, maybe recommend certain tests like CTs or MRIs if they haven't actually been done. have them be done, have somebody independently take a look that's not going to editorialize a summary of his health, and we can make our judgment based on that. Or if they're willing to go the step of just getting the tests and releasing the actual tests results to the American public, okay. What they're doing is they're releasing a summary, as they've done throughout his presidencies, of what they want the narrative to be like. It's always a summary of the data, editorialized. And no serious physician, let me just end with this, no serious physician, I've talked to several of the leading radiologists, neurologists across the country, the people that you want your loved one to be cared by. Nobody's looking at his performance and saying, yes, that's normal. Nobody. Everybody's saying, yes, something here seems a little off or very off. And it does seem like it's getting worse. Again, this is me paraphrasing what the nation's leading neurologists and radiologists and others weighing in on this are observing in their own time. That's one. And two, no one thinks that there's been medical transparency. Absolutely not. This is his personal physician who doesn't even know basic facts on what his patient is and is not getting from a diagnostic standpoint. That is not transparency. And so, yes, this could be easily resolved, but they don't want to do that.
I want to thank Dr. Vin Gupta, as always, for joining us here. And I want to remind everybody to check out our ongoing series on Meidas Health. And Dr. Gupta has been interviewing some of the top medical doctors, researchers, investigators in the country. And we built out Meidas Health to counter all the disinformation from the Trump regime. And so everybody check out the Meidas Health drops when those are out there. Thanks for everything, Dr. Gupta. Thanks, everybody. And hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.